Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John's reports for the 1st of April. And while it was a nice end of the month there, that was quite interesting. We made the new lows, but saw a significant drop out of short interest, and that was a quick short cover rally, pushed almost all the way back up to 23%. Still with magenta lower, but it had popped up briefly in that stance. What we had was the crossover here of the orange to steel, and steel finally having come back below that cyan was the trigger a couple of days ago, right back here, and it's an indication that you had a reset from your short-term buyer. So you finally had a little bit of availability, so to speak, of money to come in should the need arise, and that was always the question of when you get large dropbacks. Usually get as much as 50% move back into it. This was closer to a third. It was still quite a significant range there, but it was quite neat to watch because we could see it, particularly on the 50K, as it resolved itself and the NBI white coming back underneath intraday, and that was very cool to see actually taking place. And we talked about it on the Skype chat. From an NQ standpoint, just back up to the zero pretty much. So a lot weaker, just doesn't have the same resilience. You can already see NBI white still leading it again. So it's a big difference now between the NASDAQ and the S&P, relatively speaking to indicator readings. And it's problematic, but what you did get was the lower low, relatively improved shakeout. We should have actually looked at that. Let's take a gander at it. Shakeout number for right there. Let me get it up so it's in the screen. Stayed above the -20, but it was pretty much equal to. So it's relatively corresponding. I wouldn't call that much of a divergence at this particular stage. Treasuries, again, nothing special happening in that particular case at this time. This is the nightmare. This is the indication of your stagflation, where you have modest growth potential or almost none, and now prices moving back to the upside of things, and that's going to be inflationary again. So not a good sign. Europe still holding on to that. Of course, it's going to be impacted by the higher energy costs another week or two, particularly if that holds up. But this has meant that gold's train is just getting started. Choo-choo. More power driving into that because it's an indication that inflation's not going anywhere. No real impact from a crypto standpoint because they're really reflecting more the market behaviors than separate commodity class at this particular stage. So here it was from an intraday standpoint. We were watching this, and as the even earlier 5-minute chart net, you could see there was a swift move of the magenta over MBI white. And at this particular stage, came across with magenta. We sort of went a little bit sideways on there, and then there was this brief peak where white MBI came up, but now magenta's over 33. So there's the huge power difference now. You're not down in the 25s or under where there's weakness. So every time there's a little pop back up, you had this back and forth taking place. Magenta dipped down briefly. That caused a brief move, but then turnaround spike right there at the same time that MBI white now had dropped below the 25 level, and that was heading lower, and that was your signal that things were just going to climb, and that was a fast move. So it's one of those where you see it, it's like, okay, got it, and drove all the way up to 50%. It's still negotiating right in between there now, still in a positive overall mode, even with the reset. So you've got pretty decent reset from that standpoint. Similar behavior here with that DOC creating these multiple little spider events within signal construct and resolving with a little bit of softness there with the cyan leading in this particular case, but you're at a much higher level now and won't take much for a move. And you can see this all begin with the start of Shakeout Gold right at the beginning of the day, started to rise. And as it collected more and more momentum and you moved above the -13 on the shakeout, then once we got to the positive ground, which happened right at the big move there, but we turned white from a viewpoint right about here on the descent, and that was just before the turnaround move began. So there was plenty of opportunity to jump into that run. It was nice. From an intraday, you can see we had the early morning and then movement was just nice run. All stayed above 76%, relatively speaking. It was pretty clean. And then post market fill back in a little bit of the positives that took place coming across. Mediocre at best. And at this particular point, we're just having a battle going back in between. Now, momentum, no, there's no real momentum in this particular setup. It's just back and forth. And again, that 23% from a daily still becomes your overhead cloud. And it's just a question of, looking for continued economic data. And, you continue to see this rollover constantly of every decision that Trump and them are doing. It just ends up in court. And from a market standpoint, you can see that just delays things. You're not going to see any movement now until, well, late part of summer at best, maybe even moving into September. And it provides a lot of risk because a lot of things can happen in between that could go south. And when you don't have the, momentum of the thing building, but now stuck in sort of a malaise, it affects decisions, and affected decisions usually mean hold, and when you have hold, that has an economic impact. That's the long and the short of it for now. As always, anything relevant, I'll put on the Skype chat. Have a good one.